What up, my online friends? How are we doing? Today, I wanted to speak about something random, and that is my little London adventures I had in this grand old city. That really is one of the best cities in the world. But on these adventures, I didn't realize that they were just that, little adventures. And it's taken me a few years to kind of reconcile and review, but some of them were pretty cool and noteworthy of sharing. So here goes. My first adventure was in COVID time. Actually, I had a few before, but who cares about timescales? COVID. I was chucked out of my grand apartment. I was living in a high-rise building, paying excessive rent, living the high life, not working too much. And lo and behold, at some point, I got turfed out. And I ended back at my parents' gaff in Windsor, the royal town of Windsor. And it was tough. It was really tough. And lo and behold, due to my natural extravagant energy, my dad wasn't a fan. And I got turfed out of my parents' gaff. And I ended up going back to London. But I actually spent the first night in a travel lodge in the winter, dead nuts winter, cold of the travel lodge in Windsor. And I have to admit, the travel lodge has an amazing breakfast. If you ever go there, make sure you book the room with the breakfast. The breakfast is like a buffet and it's worth it. So here I am checking out of the travel lodge, and I decide the only option is to go back up to London and stay in a hostel and get back on my feet. But all I could afford at the time was a hostel. So for me at the time, it was super spooky. It was scary. I was like, man, I was so used to having my own flat, having my own room, particularly my bedroom. I used to love just trolling around there, ordering food, buying clothes, being a bit of a teenager, even though I was in my 20s, and just living exuberant, luxurious lifestyle. I mean, when a man has bubble baths, you know something's up, right? Anywho, that all went. That dream was shattered. And as a result, I was nervous about comprehending staying in a hostel. I was like, oh, shit. No. Because I really like my privacy. So I ended up staying in this hostel in Soho called Soho Hostel or So Hostel. And I remember the first night when I walked into this 20-bed room. Yes, you heard me right, 20 beds. And I felt like a bed bug because I had all these strangers around me from all sides of the world. My bed was right in the middle, slap bang in the middle, and I felt like a bug. I don't know if you've ever read Kafka Metamorphosis, but I felt like that bug, that father. And I was like, fuck. And my pain body erupted. If you don't know what pain body is, look up Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. My pain body, my emotions are flying off the chart. Reason being was because it was unknown. And I was shook. So it shook me out of my comfort zone. And that first night was rough, man. And one way to calm myself down is I would go to the gym. So I would look for free trials at gyms to basically go work out in the evening, kind of calm down my nervous system. So that's what I did for the first few days. And I shuffled around a few different hostels. And I remember one night, it was raining, and I had an umbrella, and the umbrella broke, and I had 30p left in my bank account. So obviously I had to borrow some money. And I remember going to the Whole Foods in Piccadilly and just being terrified. My emotions, I was projecting everywhere, blaming people, blaming my family, my brother, everybody, friends. I was a real victim. And I ended up going to Whole Foods, and I had to just swallow my pride and reach out to a friend of a friend for 20 quid. Fortunately, delightfully, he gave it to me and was a lifesaver. So with that 20 quid, I managed to book a hostel. Now, by the way, I'm an honourable dude. In Whole Foods, you can use their internet, right? But for me, I went and bought some produce. I bought a 30p banana. They really rip you off there. But I love it. I love Whole Foods, even though they rip you off. And I went up there so I could use the Wi-Fi. So I booked this hostel. Now this hostel ended up being amazing, and I ended up staying in there for 2.5 years. Can you believe it? I mean, that's a story for another time, but I remember I got through the rain, I got there, and I managed to stay there for, man, it was about £13 a night, £17. It was really, really good. And I remember they had a buffet there. If you got there before 7, then you could eat. And I got there about 6:45, and I remember going down to the kitchen, and I'd previously stayed there before and was a bit uptight. But I remember something in me that night snapped. I was like, I don't care about my image anymore. I don't care that you're from France. I don't care that you're pretty, but you're exotic. I was like, all I want is the free coffee and the free food. And that felt amazing. It was grounding. So I felt like the whole experience that I went through made me more real. And I wonder if you can relate to that. And I wonder what experiences you've had where the straw on the camel's back finally breaks you and something gets revealed, right? The shell snaps, it breaks. I remember going back to my room, and it was like an old red bunk bed. Some people, and I was happy to chat for a little bit. I remember lying down in bed being like, God, I appreciate having a bed so much. And thus, from that day forth, even though I'd forget sometimes, I never forgot that moment. It was timeless. And it reminded me that, like, appreciate the foundation in your life. Appreciate the small things. Appreciate having a bed, having food, having coffee. Because some people don't have it. And I remember I would go out that night and had like maybe £8. Like the next day, I managed to stay there for a couple of days. And I remember giving £1 to a guy so he'd get some chocolate. Now this is £8, like giving him £1. I wonder if you would do the same. Because when you develop empathy, because you're out on the streets near enough, you are basically homeless, you will relate to homeless people and will feel some compassion. And that's what I did. And yeah, man, that night really, really changed my life. And I remember I would stay in that hostel for like 2-3 days, and I was looking for work around central London. I was willing to take anything. I was mainly looking for shop work because I had some experience in that. And the business I was working for was failing at the time, and that's why I had to move out of my luxury apartment. So here I am, taking a backward step and looking for shop work. And I remember I printed my CVs using the hostel printer and went around, buzzing around looking for work. And I remember the fear that would come up, but I kept pushing. And I remember not giving up because I'd already been broken. So I wasn't giving up. And I remember this was just right before COVID was about to kick off. And there was a girl in there who basically was moving out back to her rents because of COVID. And she was planning to stay in a hostel for 2 weeks. I remember coming into the room and being like, what's up? She's like, how you doing? I said, I'm good. I said, there's some challenges, but I'm good. And I kind of explained my situation. I was sitting down on a chair. And she was like, I feel for you, man. I was like, but I remember I wasn't sorry for myself. I was just like, yeah, it's all good. I'll find a way. Don't worry, I'll find a way. Because I knew I would. And then guess what? I went and met my brother that afternoon, maybe applied for a couple more jobs. And I remember the hostel manager, Lauren, her name, calling me like, hey, Scott, I've got some news for you if you come back into the reception when you can. So I balled back over there. And guess what? This is amazing. This girl who had been leaving donated her 2 weeks to me. So instead of getting like a £200 refund, she gave that £200 to me so I could stay there for 2 weeks. Now, isn't that a miracle? That was a real miracle right there. And again, through the pain, through the strife, a miracle resulted and made me realize people do care. Strangers can care. Angels are real, because that girl was an angel. And I never got to thank her in person because she disappeared. So, yeah. I mean, I had some more amazing stories as well, but perhaps I should wrap it up here that it really was a a miracle moment for me. And I remember the grace and the love I felt. And let me tell you one more story as well. And this will kind of blow your mind as well. And this is how beautiful it is to get humbled sometimes. So what then happened is, I'm on job seekers for a while. COVID has happened, but I'm waiting for the bursary from them, which, by the way, was very humbling for me to have to go down to the job centre. But I did it, and I was still waiting for the bursary. And I remember I set up a GoFundMe, and I reached out to friends and family. And I remember sitting in a park near Russell Square. It's a bit more of a shoddier version of Russell Square. I remember sitting there in Holborn, and I was looking around, and all that was really on the benches around me were homeless people. And I remember being like, fuck, I'm one of you guys now. And it was like a real humbling moment. Once again, humbled. But I also looked around and realized I'm no better than you. That judgment of thinking I have it all together or I'm superior just went. And I realized we are all one, we're just human beings. I remember then looking at my phone, and I had my uncle donate me 50 quid, which was a surprise because we haven't really communicated for a while. And then I also remember my ex-girlfriend, who I hadn't spoken to in over 10 years, donating the same amount. And that just blew me away. I remember I was like, fuck man, like love is real, God is real, people do actually care. But it took that vulnerability. It took that honesty of I'm trying my best, but I need help. Because sometimes we can try our best and we still need help. In fact, we're always going to need help. And that reminded me people care and there is love in the world. So that's it. That's my first hostel experiences. And, you know, it was real miraculous for me. So there's my little London story. I hope it inspires you for the day. And if you are a bit down and out, just remember I was there as well. And many people are. And that just because you're down, it doesn't mean you're out. When you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain. And that's what I kind of realized. And it opened up the door to caring more about people, to kind of not being so uptight and so arrogant and having a bit of humility. So there you go. More stories to come. I love you guys. Scott out.